Okay, I wanted to assign a project on Earth history, specifically on geologic time, and I want to just take a couple minutes to explain what I'd like you to do. Uh, the project has to do with geologic time, which is what we're going to be doing next week. So the project is really a good way of kind of getting a head start on what we'll be doing in the future. So for this project, and I'll post this presentation in Google so you can look at it too. But you'll have to pick one of two options. The first option is an artistic approach to geologic time or historical geology, and the other option is a writing assignment. So let's take a look at it. The first option is the artistic one. And one of the things that I think is really fascinating about Earth history is the artwork, actually. There were obviously no humans around, and to take photographs, basically we have to use imagination, and we often use artwork to show what life was like in the past, because again, nobody was there. We of course have fossils, but we have to interpret those fossils, and we can look at the bones, but we still have to imagine what those creatures really might have looked like. Nobody really knows for sure what color the dinosaurs were, and we often show them as being green or gray and very reptile-like. It's quite possible that they were much more colorful than we can imagine. So there's this whole kind of art interpretation of what creatures of the past might have looked like. And here we could see a depiction of what the seafloor might have looked like in the past. And we could see some of the creatures that might have existed in the past. Again, this is artwork based on fossils and based on science. If we look at another one, of course, dinosaurs, right? And here we have a depiction of T-Rex. You can see those stubby little hands. Very puzzling. We don't really quite understand why T-Rex had such tiny little arms. But one of the things that's been very interesting about T-Rex, and we'll talk about dinosaurs more in the future, is we're starting to realize T-Rex probably had some feathers. Probably not that much, but ornamentation. T-Rex certainly never flew. T-Rex was way too massive for that. But many species of dinosaurs had feathers on them, and maybe weren't as scaly and reptile-like as we once thought. But they were probably covered in feathers, and maybe colorful feathers. So anyway, here's another painting. Your artwork, if you choose to do the art option, can be in any medium you would like. It could be in pencil, it could be in paint, even crayons if you do it well. So you could do whatever medium you would like. The thing is, it has to be scientifically accurate. So if you choose to do, say, dinosaurs, for instance, well, you have to accurately show the dinosaur that you're trying to show, and it has to be representative of the time period. And we'll talk about time periods in a minute. But one of the things that I'll be looking for is if you're going to show, say, a pterosaur, well, did pterosaurs actually exist at the time of T-Rex? If you're going to show some sort of triceratops, there were many different types of triceratops, did it actually exist at the time as the other dinosaurs being shown in your illustration? So if you're going to show different creatures, in the habitat that they lived, it has to be scientifically accurate. You can't just sort of throw different creatures together that didn't exist at the same time. So it has to be representative of the time period. And we'll talk about time in just a minute. The essay approach, similar concept. In this case, though, you're writing and not drawing. Some of you maybe are more artistic and will choose the artistic approach. And actually with the art too, again, just to go back to that for a second, you could use any medium you would like. So you could do, I really messed that up. Let me go back to that. You could use any medium you'd like. You could even sculpt something if you have clay, and make something out of clay if you'd like. You could use colored pencil, all kinds of things. So that's a little frustrating. Let me get this back together here. But anyway, you could use any medium that you would like is really the point. So whatever you want to make it out of, you can make it from. Go for it. There's no restrictions on what you use was really the point that I was trying to get before I messed up with the slideshow there. But you don't have to use color. You could use pencil. You could use anything that you have or anything that you have access to. Anyway, the essay approach, back to that. 4-paragraph essay about traveling back in time to a specific geologic time period. So if we imagine that we have some sort of time machine and you could go back in time to, say, the Jurassic period, well, your essay should be about what would that trip be like? What would you find? And this is kind of a blend of science fiction and, of course, with any science fiction, there's science to it. So your essay should accurately describe the conditions and organisms that you might encounter on a trip through time to that time period. So you have the option of showing a realistic, scientifically accurate depiction of a time period, or you could write about what it would be like to have a time machine go back in time to a specific time period. So you're going to have to do a little research on geologic time. Now let's talk about the time periods. You have the time periods listed on page 8 of your reference table. And again, if you don't have your reference table at home, you can print one out, or you could at least look at one on the computer. You could look at this one. You could also go to Google and just type in New York State Earth Science Reference Table, and it'll be the first thing that pops up. It's a PDF that you can print out if you want to. Anyway, geologic time, we'll spend much more time on it in the future. What I want you to focus on for this project are geologic time periods. There are what are called eras and eons and epochs and so on, but we're not worried about that at this point. Pretty much everybody, I think, has heard of the Jurassic period because of the movies. But there are other time periods that are also really interesting. And the geologic time periods go all the way back to what was called Cambrian time. Cambrian really begins life on Earth as we know it, or I should say life on Earth, not as we know it. And if we look over here in this column, it says life on Earth. So this is a little description of what creatures existed at the different time periods. You don't have to worry about the epochs. That's not what we're getting into at this point. So only the time periods, which would be Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian. The Carboniferous gets divided up into Mississippian, Pennsylvanian. Then we have Permian, Triassic, Jurassic, Cretaceous, Paleogene, Neogene, and Quaternary. And if we look at the life on Earth column, it tells you what was roughly happening. So this is a good starting place for this project, is to look over these time periods and just pick one. If we pick, say, Devonian, for example, well, we're largely going to be focusing on the ocean probably. But it says earliest amphibians and plant seeds, extinction of many marine organisms at the end of the Devonian, Earth's first forests, Earth's ammonites would be like ammonites and sharks, abundant fish. The Devonian is often referred to as the age of the fish. This is when fish really evolved and really came onto the scene. If we look at other time periods, Silurian, earliest insects, land plants and animals, earliest land plants and animals, abundant eurypterids. We talked about eurypterids in another video. So again, you can do whatever time period you like. It just needs to be scientifically accurate. I know many of you will probably jump to the Jurassic because of the dinosaurs. That's okay, as long as it's scientifically accurate. Also keep in mind, there were abundant dinosaurs in the Triassic and also the Cretaceous. So dinosaurs weren't just in the Jurassic. I think Jurassic sounds kind of cool, and that's why they used it for the movie, like Jurassic Park. Probably wouldn't sound as exciting as if they called it Cretaceous Park or something like that, right? Anyway, Cretaceous, we have more dinosaurs. Then we have more recent times, Quaternary. And even in the Quaternary time, well, there's a lot of interesting things here with humans, mastodons, mammoths would be like the last ice age. Times of saber-toothed cats. And, here there's a lot of interesting things because humans existed at the same time of mastodons and mammoths. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest humans probably hunted these animals, possibly even to extinction. We have large carnivorous mammals, things like saber-toothed cats and so on. So, there's much more out there than just the dinosaurs. Of course, the dinosaurs get a lot of attention. Also, too, remember there's plants. During Mississippi and Pennsylvanian times, large coal-forming forests, you don't necessarily have to do animals, you could do plants too, if you chose. Large and numerous scale trees and seed ferns and so on, vascular plants, earliest reptiles. And this is a good starting point for doing this assignment. So find a time period that might be of interest to you. Look at the life on Earth column, but then you're going to have to do more work on your own and do some Google searches to see, well, if you pick, say, Silurian, well, what types of organisms lived during that Silurian time. Look at pictures, try to get a sense of what was going on in the world during that time period. Decide if you want to write the essay, decide if you want to do the art project. You could do one of the two. So you've got to pick one, and one of these two is something everyone can do. Not everyone is an artist, but everybody could at least write a little essay. So you can choose one of the two projects. And again, you don't have to worry about the epochs, only the period and what was happening at that time. And even insects can be very interesting. Our earliest insects, what a lot of people don't realize too, is these early primitive insects were huge. We had dragonflies with wingspans that were probably, I think, close to 1 or 2 foot across. So huge insects in the past. So, again, you could just jump right into dinosaurs. That's what a lot of students like to do with an assignment like this. But just keep in mind, there's a lot of other really interesting creatures that existed in Earth's history. If you're interested in something beyond dinosaurs, something else you might want to research are the Burgess Shale fauna. If you just do a Google search on Burgess Shale fauna, you'll find all kinds of really, really exotic, strange creatures. The Edacarian fauna, also very interesting creatures. So, of course, dinosaurs attract a lot of attention, and they should. They're really interesting. But there's a lot of other really interesting creatures out there. Early mammals, interesting, and, some of these large carnivorous mammals, very, very cool. And in many ways, just as interesting and as cool as dinosaurs. They just get less attention. And, of course, you could look at plants. You could look at all kinds of different tree species and so on, or you could show plants and insects and animals together, however you want to do it, but it needs to be scientifically accurate. So you need to look at the time period and look at what creatures actually existed at that time. Just because dinosaurs existed during the Jurassic, well, not all dinosaurs existed during the Jurassic. Some existed during the Triassic and not the Jurassic. Some existed during the Jurassic and not the Cretaceous. So, again, it needs to be scientifically accurate. You can't have dinosaurs from different time periods together. It's got to be by time period, so it needs to be scientifically accurate. And I think the reference table is a great place to start a project like this, but again, it's only a starting point. You're going to have to take what you find in the reference table and then take it many steps further, but this is a good place to begin. So I hope you have some fun with it. We'll be looking at geologic time in more detail. We'll be talking about the epochs, the eras, and the eons later on. But I thought that this would be an interesting way to start geologic time. There's also the lab for this week on matching rock layers, and I really tried to walk you through that. So I don't think that lab is going to take you a lot of time because I really did the bulk of it for you to really get you going with it. So anyway, these are the 2 assignments for this week. And then there's the lecture videos on relative dating. Okay, so I think that's a good amount of work for this week. And next week we'll get more into geologic time. So all for now, and choose which assignment path you want to focus on and which time period you're going to work from. So good luck, and that's all for now.